Now, to some grim news on the other side of the pond. At least 30 people have died after Hurricane Ian hit Florida. The death toll was expected to climb higher as floodwaters receded. Search teams are reaching more areas that were initially cut off by the storm.
Yeah, I mean, there are terrible pictures involved and people we know suffering, because it's always the aftermath of a big hurricane, isn't it, that seems to show up just how vulnerable we all are. The US President, Joe Biden, says his government will do whatever it takes to help search, rescue, recovery and rebuilding.
Well, let's talk to meteorologist Craig Seltzer, who's in Miami. Morning to you, Craig. Look, what do we know about the current situation?
So the current situation is still very bad because we're still doing the rescues of people who were cut off. And unfortunately, they're still finding some bodies floating in the water. These are people who, when the storm hit, it literally washed their homes away from the waves when the Gulf of Mexico poured into Fort Myers and Fort Myers Beach and just carried people out. It's a very tragic situation. And then there are hundreds of thousands whose homes have been damaged and they probably can't even stay there for very long.
Incredible. We're seeing it right now, some before and after pictures, and you can see just how devastated those areas are. And it's a bit like Hurricane Katrina, isn't it? The hurricane is one thing, and as a meteorologist, that's the big event. But it tends to be the following 3 or 4 days later that you actually get to grips with just how devastating it has been.
That's right, because of course the cameras can't get in right away and see how bad it is, but we know from the Hurricane Hunter planes how strong the hurricane was when it hit the land. And then we saw from some cameras on the ground, some cameras that were actually recording the storm surge, how high the storm surge got. And it got at least to one story, the top of the first floor of many homes. Here in Florida, we always say you have to get out of the storm surge. That's the worst of it, where the water comes in. That's the most deadly. And we usually just do what we call hunker down, which means get to the middle of your house and wait out the wind. Your house may start to come apart, but hopefully you'll be safe. But South Florida, Southwest Florida especially, where the hurricane hit, there's many elderly people, many retired people, people that just, it's difficult for them to suddenly move inland. And unfortunately, most of the fatalities are old people, elderly people who drown when the water came in.
Craig, were you meteorologists expecting it to be as bad as it was? Were expecting Ian to be as strong as it was?
So there were two things that we were watching. One, we knew it was going to be strong because the water south of Cuba and the Northwest Caribbean, it was so warm, almost like bath water. And usually that provides the impetus, the strength to a strong hurricane. So we knew the possibility of it being strong was there, but the forecast track was the thing that we didn't quite have quite right. It looked like it might go closer to Tampa. Everybody in Tampa was preparing. And just 18 years ago, there was a hurricane named Charlie. It was much smaller, but it was still intense, and it went over the exact same area. And the lesson from that was that also looked like it was going to Tampa, and then it turned to the right and came in farther to the south and hit the Fort Myers, Port Charlotte area as well.